Cameron Grimes pinned Kushida in what I thought was a very good match. Grimes is a weird one for me in that when I hear the first chord of his theme music, I have the same reaction that I used to have when I would hear the Boss Man's music when he came back for that second run, or X-Pac's music, or X Factor's music, which is not a good thing. I immediately become disinterested until I see him work, and then I realize how good he really is. I don't know why. I don't know why I feel this way. Grimes hit this great-looking deadlift German suplex to Kushida for a near fall. Kushida came right back, hit a diving cannonball out to the floor from the top rope that looked like it sucked. He landed right on his ass and his hip. They were trading moves back and forth when, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Cameron Grimes caught him with the leaping double foot stomp for the win. The problem with these types of matches, where it's move, 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 bang, 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 dives, Spanish flies, and it's really a lot of the same shit. I mean, let's be honest. Is that when you finally hit your finish, after all these spectacular dives and maneuvers, and you just out of nowhere hit your finish, like Grimes did here with the standing foot stomp, it just seems underwhelming. Like, it does not feel like a devastating enough move to finish off your opponent with after all the other punishment that he took. That applies to Grimes' finish as well. I did have something of an epiphany, though. I'm not picking on anybody specific here. But I was sitting here the other night. I went down the YouTube rabbit hole. I mentioned it was Stone Cold's birthday the other day. So there were some recommended videos on my sidebar of Stone Cold Steve Austin. And so I went back and I'm watching all these old clips of him coming out to help Mick Foley win the championship and him on the Zamboni and just all of these incredible moments with crowds that they were just going crazy. I mean, I miss having crowds like that. And it's not just Stone Cold. I mean, Stone Cold's the most popular star ever. I mean, obviously he's going to get big reactions. But I was watching some Goldberg stuff. He would pick up guys for the jackhammer. He picked up the Big Show. He picked up the Giant on one episode of Nitro. He's getting ready to give him the jackhammer, and you look out into that audience, and you can feel the anticipation. You can feel it. It's building. He gets this guy up into the air. He holds him there. He held him in the air for a good 3 seconds before he dropped him, and it was like the biggest thing in the world. And a lot of people will give shit to Goldberg. Oh, he doesn't know how to work. He's green. He retired Bret Hart. All these things. And he admitted in the interview he just did with Austin on the network, he did the Broken Skull sessions, and he said, I'm still green. After 20 years in the business, he's still green and doesn't know everything there is to know. But I watch old segments like that, or when he beat Hogan in the Georgia Dome, or when he beat Raven for the U.S. title, and I think to myself, this guy doesn't get enough credit. People will give him shit for a whole bunch of different things, but they don't give him credit because he was this larger-than-life personality. He couldn't do flips and dives and all, the knee strikes. There's a certain method to a lot of these matches we see now on NXT, and even in AEW. They're guilty of this as well with all the dives and the high spots and stuff. It's just a different time now in wrestling. I do miss those days where we had those big guys who just would go in there and would just rip the shit out of people. They had this explosiveness. There was an intensity about them. I mean, you have big guys who just lumber around that are boring as shit to watch. But a guy like Goldberg, I think if anything, he's underappreciated. He had the reason he got over in the first place. There was just something about him that is sorely missing from wrestling today. And I think to some degree it does have to do with their size. I miss having at least some big guys. And I watched a Vince McMahon CM Punk match from Raw in 2012. It might have been the last match. I feel like Vince has wrestled since then, but it was certainly the last good or decent match that Vince McMahon had in his life was in 2012. And there's this great part of the match where he and Punk, who was a heel at the time, are giving each other kendo stick shots, and the building is shaking. The hard cam is like Punk is now cowering. He's begging off from this 60-year-old man, 60-something years old. And literally the hard camera was physically shaking. That's how into this people were. And this was in 2012. You don't have to go back 20 years for all the good stuff to see crowds that gave a shit. To see that kind of emotion from the crowd. This was this decade. This was only 7 years ago. Then Ryback came out. John Cena was hurt. This was after Ryback had already been announced for that Hell in a Cell match with Punk. That was the beginning of the end, as it turned out, for Ryback. But I was reminded of how freaking over Ryback. You forget these things sometimes. It's good to be reminded. John Cena threw Punk into the ring. Ryback absolutely just destroyed him with a lariat. And again, the building is shaking. People are going nuts for this. Ryback was not a high spot guy. He was a big jacked up dude who went in there. He had this explosiveness to him. And he just beat the hell out of people. And he got over, like Goldberg, he beat guys and beat guys and beat guys, was undefeated. He was this unstoppable monster. And he got over. And he was a big dude. And we don't really have that today. And I do think that there needs to be room for that in wrestling. You can't just have matches like this all the time with the smaller guys going in there and doing the knee strikes and doing the ushigoroshis and doing the dives and doing the cannonballs. Because after a while, it's like, it's all the same. So I go back every now and then and I watch this stuff to just get that appreciation for what we're really missing out on now. And that's why it aggravates me when I see a Braun Strowman. He's a very athletic big man. And I cannot bring myself to care anymore about what he does. They had a very small window with this guy to really just push him or put the title on him, let him be the guy to go to WrestleMania that one year instead of Roman, and have him take the title and beat Brock, and they didn't do it, and they missed their window. And instead they had him tagging with a 9-year-old child to win tag team belts, and they gave us instead one of the most horrible WrestleMania main events of all time. And they missed their window, and they beat him, and they beat him, and they beat him, and that's not how you get people to care. He could have been that guy for this era of WWE, that big guy who's got, some athleticism to him that the people are really behind, who's this unstoppable monster. Would they have turned on him eventually? Probably. That's what they do with everybody else these days. But that's what really made me so aggravated, seeing the booking of Braun Strowman over the last few years. So anyway, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I felt this was worth talking about. I felt this was something that was worth mentioning. I love NXT to death. I really do. And I appreciate that style. And I know some people don't. I love NXT. I love those NXT big match main events like we got this week that do tell a good story, that do have good wrestling, that do have the crowd emotionally vested in this. That Full Sail crowd was hanging on every move in that match with Rhea and Shayna. But the week-to-week television, and you watch all these matches and the style and the move sets, and it's all the same shit, and it all blends together, and I just wish there was more variety. You got to have the right people. You can't just take any big guy, any strong guy, and put him in there and expect that he's going to get over. But with the right person and the right push and the right attention paid to it, you can have a Ryback, you can have a Goldberg, you can have a Braun Strowman at the beginning when people were really starting to get into him. But you got to make sure that you handle him, the right way. And we don't really have anybody like that right now.